At last we had reached our final destination, and there were just 4 more battles between me and my goal of becoming champion of the Kanto region. Was I nervous? No. I was terrified. It wasn't really my Pokémon that I doubted. I was questioning whether I was really a good enough trainer to do this. But my Pokémon believed in me, and I didn't want to disappoint them by backing out now. And so I stocked up on supplies and went through the doors to face my final challenge, the Elite Four. Our first opponent was Lorelei, who specialized in Ice-type Pokémon. Her first Pokémon was a Dewgong, and I led with Luffy, who started off strong with a Brick Break for the instant KO. Lorelei's second Pokémon was a Slowbro, not an Ice-type Pokémon, and so I switched over to Shirahoshi, who sailed over a surf and struck Slowbro with a Thunderbolt. The Slowbro looked lost, like it had no idea where it was, and a second Thunderbolt was enough to knock it out. Third was Cloyster, so I switched back to Luffy as it set up Hail. I had Luffy go for Brick Break, but Cloyster closed itself in its shell, protecting it from Luffy's attack. Luffy tried again and did manage to hit it, but then Lorelei healed before we could finish it off with the Thunder Punch. Cloyster once again used Protect to shield itself from another attack, but as the hail came to an end, Luffy connected with another Brick Break to knock out the giant clam. Then came Jinx, and I had Luffy use Fire Punch, which barely did anything at all. Jinx then used Lovely Kiss, which put Luffy to sleep, meaning it was time to bring in Kyujiro. Jinx hit him with an Ice Punch, and then he unfortunately missed a Fire Blast, allowing Jinx to put him to sleep too. Unfortunately, I didn't have a plan C, so Kyujiro had to stay in battle. While he was asleep, Jinx used Attract and 2 more Ice Punches, and when Kyujiro finally woke up, he was unable to fight through his infatuation, and Jinx landed yet another Ice Punch. I really couldn't risk bringing Luffy back in, and I guess Kyujiro realized I was panicking, because he snapped out of his hot-eyed daze and hit Jinx with a powerful flamethrower that knocked it out, and also melted a lot of the surrounding ice. Finally, Lorelei sent her to Lapras, and I decided to take a chance and had Kyujiro use Bounce, which ended up being a horrible mistake. He did connect, but it did significantly less damage than expected, and he ended up being washed away with all the melted ice from the flamethrower he used against Jinx. I brought Shirahoshi back out to hit Lorelei's Lapras with the Thunderbolt, and then took a body slam which ended up paralyzing her. Lorelei's Lapras then munched on a citrus berry to heal itself and hit Shirahoshi with a Confuse Ray, which of course made her hurt herself in confusion. Things were not looking good, and just when I thought I had made a horrible mistake, Shirahoshi connected with a Thunderbolt, knocking out Lorelei's Lapras and winning us our first Elite Four battle. Even though we had won, I wasn't able to revive Kyujiro, meaning I only had 5 Pokemon with me to go forward. I only planned to have him battle against Lorelei anyways, but I still felt guilty for allowing him to be knocked out in the first place. All that being said, I couldn't let my other 5 Pokemon down by giving up, and so we ventured forward to the next room, where we met Bruno, the fighting-type trainer. Or so I thought, until he led with an Onix. I led with Luffy, who hit with a Brick Break that was just short of knocking it out. Onix retaliated with a Rock Tomb, which didn't do too much damage, but did slow Luffy down a bit. Bruno then used a full restore on his Onix as Luffy went for a Rock Smash, which didn't do a lot of damage but did lower Onix's defense, meaning Luffy could knock it out with another Brick Break. A second Onix came out, and once again Brick Break fell just a little too short to take it out, and then Onix used Earthquake. My heart dropped, but Luffy did not, and he was able to defeat the Onix with a Rock Smash. Next, Bruno finally sent out an actual fighting-type Pokemon, a Hitmonchan of his own. I had Luffy use Fire Punch, which didn't do too much damage, but did inflict a burn. The opponent Hitmonchan hit Luffy with a Rock Tomb, which once again slowed him down, so I decided to switch over to Hikaru, and Hitmonchan used Sky Uppercut, which did less damage than what he got from his burn. I then had Hikaru use Earthquake, and unlike Luffy, Bruno's Hitmonchan couldn't stay on his feet and fell unconscious. Next, Bruno sent out a Hitmonlee, who also fell to an Earthquake from Hikaru. Bruno's ace Pokemon was a Machamp, who actually did stay on his feet after an Earthquake, and then he started flexing and pulled out a citrus berry from a very questionable storing place and ate it. Despite being healed from the berry, another earthquake was enough to knock out the Machamp, winning us our second Elite Four battle. Bruno looked a little pale and motion sick after our battle and told me to go forward before turning away, probably to avoid potentially throwing up on me. I couldn't blame him. After all of the earthquakes, I was dizzy too. And so I healed up, found my footing again, and went through to the next room. Our next opponent in the Elite Four was Agatha, Professor Oak's bitter old ex, who was clearly still very much obsessed with him. Anyways, she led with a Gengar and I led with Shota. The Gengar hit Shota with a Confuse Ray right away, but Shota broke through and connected with a Psychic. Gengar then used Double Team, which somehow undid the effects of the Confuse Ray, and Shota landed another Psychic which knocked it out. Next was a Golbat, who did minimal damage with Air Cutter, and then I had Shota set up rollouts. Golbat did hit Shota with another Air Cutter, but then fell to his second round of rollout. And then came an Arbok, who lowered Shota's attack with a Glare, and then hit him with a Sludge Bomb. Shota kept using rollout, and took another Sludge Bomb, which actually did a good amount of damage, but he finally knocked out the Arbok with another rollout. Next, Agatha sent out her ace Gengar, who failed to put Shota to sleep and was obliterated by Shota's final round of rollout. Agatha's last Pokemon was a Haunter, who also failed to put Shota to sleep, and was just strong enough to survive a Psychic. Agatha healed her Haunter, and Shota hit another Psychic, which hit a bit harder than the first, but still wasn't enough to knock it out. Shota's third Psychic admittedly wasn't as strong, but Agatha was out of healing items, and so a fourth Psychic finally won us our third Elite Four battle. 3 down and 1 to go. We now had just one more battle between me and my dream, which had now become a shared dream with my Pokemon. And so I made my way to face the final Elite Four member, Lance the Dragon Trainer. Dragons have long since been seen as the strongest and most difficult Pokemon to train. My final challenge was finally here, and now I had the perfect ace Pokemon to handle it. Lance led with Gyarados, and I led with Shirahorshi. Despite being intimidated, Shirahorshi outsped and landed a Thunderbolt, which ended up being a critical hit and easily took out the Gyarados. Next, Lance sent out an Aerodactyl, who used Ancient Power, which hit Shirahorshi pretty hard, but she hit back even harder with an Ice Beam for another one-shot win. Lance's third Pokemon was a Dragonair, who also fell to a single Ice Beam, as did his second Dragonair, and even his ace Dragonite. I had just defeated the final member of the Elite Four with one-shots from a single Pokemon. Together we did it. I have become champion. Or at least I thought I did. Apparently I'd been beaten to beating the Elite Four, meaning there was already a champion. And of course, it was Gary Oak. If I wanted to become champion, I had to defeat him one more time. And for the first time ever, I would be facing up against him without Victor. I pushed my guilt aside and made my way to Gary. Apparently he'd been waiting for me. Of course he was a little proud about his title, and in all honesty, he deserved it. He'd truly earned it, and he accepted my challenge to take that title away from him. As always, he led with Pidgeot, and I led with Shirahorshi. Pidgeot kicked up some sand to make it harder for her to see, but she still connected with an Ice Beam to knock it out. Next, Gary sent out Rhydon, who easily fell to a Surf. And then came Executor, who also went down to a single Ice Beam. Fourth was Alakazam, who outsped and hit Shirahorshi with a Psychic before she could get off another Ice Beam. And after another round of Psychic and Ice Beam, Alakazam fell. Fifth was Gyarados, and even though Shirahorshi probably could have taken it out with Thunderbolt, she was getting a bit tired, so I switched over to Shota, who took a Dragon Rage. Gyarados hit a second Dragon Rage, and I had Shota use Return, which did a decent amount of damage. He took yet another Dragon Rage before finishing Gyarados off with another Return. Finally, Gary sent out Charizard, who hit Shota hard with a Fire Blast. And then I made Shota go for Rollout. It obviously wasn't enough to knock out Charizard, and Charizard knocked out Shota with another Fire Blast. I then decided to bring out my own honorary dragon, Guilme, who outsped and hit Charizard with a single ancient power, knocking it unconscious and thereby defeating Gary, and making me the new champion. And that concludes my Nuzlocke run of Pokemon Leaf Green. I would have done more with the whole thing with Oak coming and taking to register my Pokemon into the Hall of Fame and stuff, but I don't feel like I deserve that, because in all honesty, after I lost Victor in that last fight against Gary, I lost motivation for this game. I definitely didn't do the Lorelei and Gary fights as well as I should have, and I genuinely feel bad of that, because I know if I had just played a little differently, I absolutely could have had all 6 of my Pokemon still be unfainted. That being said, I did really enjoy this run, because the point of a Nuzlocke is to use Pokemon that you've never used before, and I did that as much as possible. I actually got a comment, I think on the second last video that I posted, so episode 13, where someone said that my team was horrible. That is because I was not trying to get the best team with what I had. I was trying to use the Pokemon that I would never ever use if I could just use whatever Pokemon I wanted. And I actually really enjoyed it. Also, because I got so attached to Victor Basby and because I still feel so guilty about Kaname, I actually want to play through the game using only Poison-type Pokemon. So I'm definitely going to do it, but if you guys actually want to see me do that, let me know down in the comments so I know to actually record. It will not be as long as this or what I did with my Fire Red run, where it'll be multiple episodes. I will pre-record the entire game and then smush all the important things into one video, so it won't be as story heavy as this. Anyways, I think I've done enough yapping. That is it for this video. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, be sure to leave me a like, leave me a comment, let me know if you want to see that poison type run. And if you're new and want to see the next series whenever it comes out, be sure to hit subscribe and book the bell. Anyways, until the next series, you just keep rocking. Bye!